Hello. How is everybody? Okay, it is 5:30, and I think we're going to start recording. Marcia, if you want to set the recording.
It says it's already recording.
Wonderful. So good evening, everyone. Anna Messager, bonjour à tous. Thank you for joining us for our fourth webinar of our Planetary Health webinar series and Community of Practice. Mon nom est Christina Lapperle et je suis la coordinatrice responsable gestion des programmes d'études du Bureau de l'internationalisation de la santé mondiale. My role today is to provide the housekeeping remarks. If you encounter any technical issues, our advice is to close all other applications on your computer, exit the webinar, and rejoin the session. All right, I'm trying to get to the next screen. One second. There we go. I would like to begin today's session with our Indigenous land acknowledgement. We pay respect to the Algonquin people who are the traditional guardians of this land. We acknowledge their long-standing relationship with this territory, which remains unceded. We pay respect to all Indigenous people in this region from all nations across Canada who call Ottawa home. Nous reconnaissons les gardiens des savoirs traditionnels, jeunes et âgés. Nous honorons aussi leurs courageux dirigeants d'hier, d'aujourd'hui et de demain. All right. So questions will be answered after Alex's presentation, although it is my understanding that there is lots of opportunity throughout the presentation for questions as well. If you type your questions in the chat or use the raise your hand, I'm sure that we can make sure that you are able to ask your question. Et ce webinaire sera présenté en anglais, mais les participants auront aussi la possibilité de poser des questions en français. Je crois que Alex, il est bilingue complètement, alors ça, il n'y a pas de problème aujourd'hui. And it is now time to introduce Dr. Hussein Malou, our Director of Planetary Health at the Faculty of Medicine. I will leave it to him to provide a brief overview of our Planetary Health webinar series and Community of Practice, and to introduce our speaker for today's workshop. Dr. Malou will also act as moderator for today's Q&A session. Over to you, Dr. Malou.
Great, thanks, Christina. As you know, this is now our fourth webinar, and we've tried to really put together a series that would enable people to hopefully by the end of it feel somewhat more confident in the area of planetary health, because it's a relatively new, it's new for people. And as we were putting together the webinar series, when we were chatting, and again, Christina was a huge part of putting this together. One of the things that came up is that a lot of people want to do stuff in this new area, and we know a lot of things within healthcare, actually those change ideas fail, and even if they work for a bit, they tend to kind of peter out after a little while. And so Christina had actually seen Alex speak and had been to one of his seminars and was raving about it. And when we were talking about this, we were like, we need to have something on change to kind of help people implement their ideas. Now, the one thing I'll say is that, if our attendance has been generally much higher, and, some of it may be relative to like traffic today, but I think, part of it is I think people don't necessarily always appreciate how important and how fundamental all this is to what we do. And so, I'm really excited today to introduce Alex. He's got a certificate from Cornell in human resource studies. He's got his bachelor's in international hospitality management. He's worked with like international companies and worked internationally for like 20 years on more than just change management. He's involved with psychological safety in workspaces, and I'm sure I'm butchering this, Alex, but all that to say is I think we're really lucky to have someone as knowledgeable as him present to us today, and I'm really looking forward to it. And so this will be posted on the Planetary Health website, and I hope you encourage others to check this out, because I think there'll be a lot for us to learn. So Alex, I'll hand it over to you. And thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for the invitation, and I'm really honored to be there. And I would like to welcome everyone for today's webinar. So I will go ahead and make sure to share the screen. Here we are. And if I can have just a confirmation, Dr. Moulou, that you're able to see the screen.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, so welcome everyone. So we'll start today over the next 30 to 40 minutes that we will have together about change management and what concrete tools and tips and strategies we can give you to make sure that any change or any initiative, any project that you will undertake have a higher chance of success than what actually the stats tell us when we talk about change management. But the first thing I like for us to do is I'm going to ask everyone that's here on the webinar today to first cross your arms. So if you can just go ahead and cross your arms. Difficult because I see a lot of blank screen, but I will imagine you're crossing your arms. So if you have crossed your arms right now, I'm going to ask you now to cross them the other way. And then I know that some of you are pretty much saying, is there another way? What do you mean another way? And some of you might be struggling to say, okay, well, what does it mean? So if you try to figure it out and cross your arms your normal way and then the other way, I'm now going to ask you a few questions that I'd like, and please feel free to unmute and share your feelings. So the first thing I want to ask you is, how did it feel when I asked you the first time to cross them, to just cross your arms? Yeah, Dr. Moulou?
First time you asked it, it felt fine. I mean, I was kind of wondering why you were asking us to do that, but yeah. Yeah.
So apart from the fact that I didn't explain the main reason, for most of us, when we just asked to cross the arm, it was felt natural, and you don't really need to think; it comes natural way. Then, how did you felt when I asked you to cross them the other way?
So I guess I'll just go with me for now, since I don't see anyone else chiming in. It felt weird. It just felt different, and I had to kind of think about it, and I did it, and then I was like, did I actually do it? So I had to like check and make sure I actually had reversed my arm. So I did it again just to make sure I'd actually done it. And I certainly have one way which I guess I typically cross my arms, and then when I do it the other way, it doesn't feel quite natural.
Yeah, so, and I think there's also maybe a comment in cross my arm the other way, that'll never work. Yeah, so some of us will also say, and Shirley.
Yeah, hi. I was
Hi.
thinking with yoga, I'm used to kind of having to think and cross my legs, but I really struggled when it came to my arms. It's more one way, only one directional for my arms for some reason.
And I think that a lot of us will experience the same thing. We don't even sometimes even think there's another way, because we always done it a certain way. It's the way that we felt natural. And so when I ask you to cross then the other way, some of you like, okay, well, what does it really mean? I have a hard time doing it. It feels kind of uncomfortable. Maybe even some of you are saying, well, anyway, Alex cannot even see me in the camera, so I'm not even going to change the way I'm crossing my arms. I'm going to cross them the same way. And so just the emotion that you went through by just me asking you to cross your arm and after to cross them the other way, are exactly all the emotions that people are going through when they face change. Here was a very, very simple change that didn't really have any impact. But then think about it, when it's a major change or when it's a big change that will have so much impact. And a lot of you, I can make you remind that what happened about 3 years ago when we had the implementation of EPIC at TOH. That was a huge change, and it created a lot of emotions, much more than the one that I asked you when you cross your arm. So those are already give you some indication that when people face change, first of all, it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel sometimes unnatural. We're going to ask ourselves, why are we changing? It's going to feel sometime weird. And some of us are going to say, well, too bad, so sad, you know, like I'm not gonna change. I'm going to continue the way I've always done it because that's the natural way and that's the way I feel comfortable with it. So just to quick exercise there to show you the different emotions we're going through. So for today's, what are we going to cover? So first of all, what is change management? What does it really mean? We're going to have to talk about the 4 steps of change. So there's 4 steps that all of us are going through and we need to consider when we're going to implement change. Then we're going to talk about the human behavior and the importance of communication when you want any of your change initiatives to happen. And at the end, we will give you concrete strategies and concrete tools that every single time you want to implement a new project, a new initiative, which one you should use and start to use from the get-go. Always like to start any of the workshop with quotes, and I think this one tells a lot. If you concentrate on results, you'll never change. If you concentrate on change, you will get result. And that means that too often when we want to start and implement an initiative, we don't have a change management plan. We just have an idea and say, okay, well, this is the idea, and I'm going to go ahead and implement the idea. But we never take the time to think, okay, how am I going to implement this idea by considering all the change management aspect, the emotion that people will experience and so on. Because there's one thing that all of us need to understand. You can have the best idea in the world. If people don't understand your idea, if people are not willing to implement it, it will never happen. Because it's the people that will make your initiative, your project, or your idea happen. Because if you always need to nag people to make sure they are doing it, that's not what a successful change management. Change will happen successfully the day you are no longer there to nag people to do the initiative you have implemented. And that's something really important. Is the day you are no longer there, if people are doing the new initiative of what you have implemented without you having to tell anyone anything, that means it's successful there. So now I'd like to ask you a few questions, and we'll start with the first question. So please unmute, raise your hand, or you can also write in the chat functions. I want you to tell me, what are some of the drivers of change? What drives change in general? So I can give you one example. So you will have already something in mind. For instance, financial constraint will drive change. What else?
Yes, if there's if there's an obvious kind of problem or issue, that would be a driver for change.
So we might have identifying a gap in our quality assurance, and some gap that might happen. Yes. What else? See something in the chat. Looking for pleasure. Yes. So to have a burning platform. Yes. What else? A need to improve care delivery, critical incidents. Yes. What else can drive change? Pandemics, yes. Social pressure, yes. So a lot of different variables can drive change. So when technology will drive change, fear, anxiety, yes, definitely. Lack of resources will drive change. Government as well, new policies that will come, or the Royal College that will come with new procedures and so on. A lot of those things will drive change. What can drive change as well? Someone that's just joined your department. We have now new peers that have joined your department that will drive change, whether on the positive or on the negative, because it will change the entire dynamic of the team. One person coming in or leaving, change the dynamic there. So there's a lot of different drivers of change. So now when we ask people often, do you consider yourself a change driver? Do you consider yourself that you always embrace change? And most people, when we ask this question, a lot of people will say, oh, yeah, I really, I like change. I really embrace it and so on, because nobody really likes to be seen as the one that's a resistor, that don't like change and so on. But let's be honest, it depends. Some of us basically, depending on the situation, will embrace change, and sometimes we will hate change. Because if I was to say to all of you right now, we're going to cut our salaries by 50%, I don't think anyone on the call is going to say, oh yeah, great, I love this change. So it's not going to happen that way. So therefore, I think it's important that you also realize that it's not always the same people that hate change and always the same people that like change. It will depend on what is the change we're being exposed to there. So now the other question to you on the call is, why can change be difficult? So go ahead, you can, same thing, chat function, unmute, raise your hand. So why can change be difficult? What have you experienced yourself in the past when you try to implement change? Yeah, bureaucracy, yes. You're no longer an expert, all right. What else? Competing priorities, so we don't have enough time, yes. The culture, yes, no time to learn new things. It takes time, the fear of failing, yes, definitely. Not many like change, they resist, used to doing the old way. So a lot of different things. So yes, so the main reason why change can be difficult, the first thing, it takes time. It takes a lot of time to implement change. So for change to happen, it's not just like a 100-meter dash. You have to understand that when you want to implement change, it will be more like a marathon. And in a lot of cases, it will be like an ultra marathon. Any change that will involve a change in culture, in the cultural aspect, will take sometimes 5 to 10 to 15 years to be implemented. And so what we see is that one of the main reasons why change can be difficult and why it can be difficult to implement initiative is that the people that are initiating the change often will give up because it's too much resistance. And so we will tackle this point. It's definitely something. And why can change as well be very difficult in healthcare is that healthcare is an environment where it's all about structure, it's about detail, it's an environment where we need to make sure that everything is right, everything is correct, and therefore it's an environment where mistakes are not being celebrated. And therefore there is the fear that if I want to start a new initiative, a new project, it might fail. And if it might fail, then people might judge me. And therefore I think I will be better off to just continue with the status quo. At least I will not be failing. So there's also a culture, like one of you were saying, that's ingrained in healthcare where making mistakes and failing is not being celebrated, and therefore change could be even more difficult to be managed properly and to happen correctly. So now let's see some of the stats. So I don't want anyone to be depressed, but I think it's important to have a good wake-up call there. Here are some stats to consider. 70% of all change initiatives will fail. So already you know that if you're going to start to want to implement a new project, a new initiative, you have 3 chances out of 10 that it will be successful. The goal, of course, of this workshop or webinar is to give you tools to increase your chance of success. Any change initiative that will involve an IT component has a chance of failing that will go up to 90%. Why even higher? Because when we suddenly have some IT component, and I can take, for instance, the case of Epic, the reason is that there's going to be bugs and the system sometimes is going to crash and so on. And the people that resisted the change will say to, oh, see, I told you it wasn't going to fail. So they're going to see that anything that's IT related with all the bugs that it can have and the fact that nothing will be perfect and sometimes it will create more trouble and so on, that will create the fact that people will jump on it and started to rally more people to resist the change. And therefore, it's possible that, yes, for instance, the software has been implemented, but it's possible that 2 years after, they decide to revert back to the old way of working. And therefore, it's not because something has been launched that the change has been successful. And that's something I want really people to understand. It's not because the day you're going to implement your initiative, it's not there that you're going to know if it's being successful. It's not because it was the go live date. You will only know if your change and if your initiative is successful once again, if people have adopted it and it's ingrained in their way of working. So sometime we will only know that one of your initiatives could be successful, maybe like 6 months, a year, or 2 years after it was launched. So once again, it's a false idea to think that just because you went live, that's it, done, it's a success. So what are some of the reasons as well that those numbers are very high is that about 30% of the people that implement change, they don't have a formal structure, they don't have a plan, they don't consider the human aspect, how the human behavior, or how people are going to behave when they face change, and they give up too early because there's so much resistance. So those are things to consider there. So here is a definition of what we could say about change management. So we say that change management is the application of a structured process and set of tools for leading the people side of change to achieve a desired outcome. I like people that are here on the call to tell me which word on this definition jump to you, which words speak to you there on the definition that you see for you are important there. So I have tools, structured process, structure, people. Yes. So you pretty much touch on all of them. So definitely change management, what? For change management, in order for change management to be successful, you need a structured process. You need a plan. You cannot go and decide to implement something and wing it, because that's why there's going to be a high chance of failure. So you need a structured process, and that's why we will give you a tool for that. You need specific tools, that's where it is. And you need those tools for what? To lead the people. Again, is going back to the people. You can have the best idea, but if the people are not on board, your initiative will never, never be successful. Because yes, you can impose on people that you have to do it because I say so, because I'm the chief of staff, or because I'm your boss, and so on. So you have to do it. Will the people do it? Yes. Will it be successful? In my books, no. Why? Because you will not get the optimum performance you could get from people if you had involved them in the process. So yes, people will do it. Yes, the initiative will happen, but it will not happen and yield the best result it could yield possibly, because it was imposed on them and they were not part of the solution, or they were not part of the implementation. And of course, one thing that's also very important in the definition, because you want to achieve a desired outcome. It's very important when you're going to identify yourself a project, an initiative you want to implement, you need to know what is the end goal. When will I know that I crossed the finish line? And if it's not clear in your head and you are the one leading the initiative, if you don't know how you're going to measure that you have been successful or not in implementing your initiative, then how will other people know? And there's a high chance of failure. So you need to know, okay, as a result of me implementing this initiative, what will I want to see as a reference in terms of success? And we will develop this with the tool there. So what you need to understand is that there's 4 steps. All of us as human beings, when we want to implement change, we have to understand these 4 steps: awareness, interest, trial, and adoption. So what are those 4 steps? The first one, awareness. Awareness is basically, if I tell you, I don't want to create any PTSD there on the call, but if I say, okay, well, in 2024, we will go ahead and implement EPIC 2.0. Well, now I've created awareness with all of you, meaning that I gave you an information, a piece of information, and now you heard that in 2 years from now, we will implement EPIC 2.0. So you're all aware. It's not, you can be in denial, that's okay, but you have been made aware that this information is there. Now, if I have some of you on the call that raise your hand and start to ask me, okay, Alex, I want to know what is going to be EPIC 2.0. As soon as people start to ask questions, they move from the awareness phase to the interest phase, because they want to know a little bit more. Now, based on your answers and how much they like or not your answers, the people either are going to stay in the interest phase and maybe move to the trial phase, or they don't like your answers, they don't like it, they're going to revert back to being aware. So it's not something that's linear, that it's not because people move from awareness to interest that suddenly there's, okay, that's it, they are locked in the interest phase and they can only move forward. No, they can revert and regress back to being aware because they didn't like the information you provided them about your initiative. Awareness, interest, usually it's being done quite well by most organizations. But the third one, which is the trial phase, is the one where actually most of the organization have a tendency to fail. Why? Because the trial phase is the longest phase of all. And in the trial phase, that's where actually we will start to ask our end users, what do you think about this initiative? How would you do it? The trial phase should give an opportunity for the end users to give their feedback, to give their input, to tell, okay, maybe there's things that we need to change. So you have to make sure that every time you're going to launch or try to implement an initiative within your own area, you want to give opportunity for people to test it out, to modify it, and to make sure that it's not something that's locked. And so one thing, for instance, that could have been, I'm taking EPIC for most of you that as clinicians, you know about it, is that originally, EPIC, the launch date of EPIC was supposed to be July 1st, which was the worst date possible, because July 1st is when basically we have the new residents coming in. And so that will have been the worst case scenario there. But did we consult with clinicians to understand that, okay, well, maybe we should pick another date, because out of 365 days in the year, why did we have to pick July 1st? Now, it's possible that sometimes we cannot change things based on the people's feedback. At least what we need to do is explain to people why we cannot necessarily integrate their feedback there. So the trial phase is really an important phase. It allows people to feel heard and for them to voice a concern and to collaborate to help you make the better product. Same thing in the trial phase, they could like it or not. If they don't like it, then they could regress or revert back to the other steps before. And people, after they move to the adoption, as soon as someone moves to the adoption, therefore now they are locked in. Adoptions mean that now they have integrated this new way of working. They have embraced your change. You don't need to nag them anymore about how to do it. It's part of their normal routine now of how to do this. And so they have adopted it there. People need to understand, and we all need to understand, that as soon with any of the initiative you will be implemented, as soon as you go live, there will be a dip in productivity. Often organization thinks that, oh, as soon as we go live, productivity is going to skyrocket, it's going to work really well, and so on. No. Why do you think there will always be first a dip in productivity? So I'll let you answer either on the chat or unmute. Why will there be a dip? Yeah, new process to learn, get used to it. There's mistake, there's learning curve. Excellent. Yes. And although people will say, well, but sometimes people will say, well, we gave you training, so there should not be a learning curve, or you should not be making any mistakes because you got training opportunity before. Well, it doesn't matter. Yes, you can get a lot of training before. Nothing is going to replace the fact that now we are live and we are using it. So training environment is one thing, going live, it's something different, and they will always be tweaked to make as we go. So there will always be a dip in productivity. Now, what's going to be key, if you want your initiative to be successful, is the key is going to be what kind of support are you going to give and provide to people that are supposed to use your new initiative? If people don't feel supported, if people don't feel you are here to help them and answer the question they will have after the go live, then the productivity dip is going to continue to go down, 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 and it's going to crash. And it will never go up. So that's something that's really important to understand, is for you to minimize the dip, it will all have to be with making sure you provide adequate support, You are there to answer people question. You are there to help them with any inquiry they have while they are starting to integrate this new way of working or this new initiative. So again, you cannot just say, okay, now we go live. My job is done. Now it's up to you. You have to use it. If you don't know how to use it, then you guys are terrible. No, you can try this, but that's the best chance for any of your initiative to fail there. Now, human behavior. How do we all react when we face change? So whether we all like it or not, we all go through those emotions. Some of us will go very, very fast. And some of us, it can take years. And it all depends, again, to what is the change we're talking about. So for some of us, the change about, I don't know, moving from the legacy system to Epic, some of us where we adopted the change very fast. And some of us where I'm still resisting now, even though it has been 2 years that Epic is still being implemented. So what happened is the first time we give you an information that there's a new initiative and so on, most of us will be in denial. Oh yeah, I already heard about that. I'll believe it when I see it, okay. Then at one point we say, oh, wait a minute. Actually, no, he was serious about that. Oh, now we start to realize that, yeah, okay, actually there's a change coming now. There's a new initiative. And then no matter what, we will all be resisting or we will all be angry at it. Some of us, we will stay angry for a long, long time. Some of us, we will just stay angry for a microsecond. But the resistance will be there. Why we will have resistance? Because we are human beings. We don't like when things take change. We don't like when something takes us from a comfortable room that things were relaxed, we knew how to do the job, we were cruising in a certain way. And then suddenly someone throws something new and we're like, no, why? No, I was not consulted. Why are we changing? Things were working really well. I don't like it. So some of us, like I said, could stay a long time in this resistance. And most of us, often we will stay we could stay a long time in resistance or being angry is because we don't understand. We don't have enough information. We don't feel like we have a say in it, or that we don't feel heard by the people that are driving the change. Then once we start to see that actually, okay, well, resisting doesn't really work anymore because it's going ahead with or without us. Then we start to let it go with the old way. Then we say, okay, well, then let's search exactly what is it that we're going to do now. Then we start to understand the meaning of the change because we have more information. We start to see how it's going to work and so on. And at the end, the change will be internalized and we will revert back to now feeling comfortable with this new way of working. And now we see it's not as bad as we thought. And now it will start to be ingrained like the previous change were before. And then suddenly someone else will go to a conference, and after a conference, they will come and say, hey, I have a great idea. Let's do something new. And then you will go back to denial, realization, and so on. So always cyclical, and we all go through that, no matter for what it is. Very little changes, big or small, we will go there. At the end of the day, like I say, the most important piece is the people. The people will make it or break it, whether your initiative will be successful or not. And so the most important piece in a certain way is communication. We need to be able to communicate why we're doing changes. And so in communication, step one is the why. So what your audience, what your end users, what do they need to know? The first thing, they need to know, what is this goal? Why do we need to make this change, and why we can no longer afford to continue with the old way? Remember one thing, or two things I should say. First of all, never assume that people should know because it's common sense. First of all, never assume because assumption is the biggest mistake. And second of all, common sense doesn't exist, or common sense is not that common. Therefore, you need to explain to people why we need to make this change and why we can no longer afford to go the old way. And this needs to be articulate, and we will go there and we will develop this with the tool we're going to give you. You have to also tell, okay, this change, how does it fit with the organization with the values, the objective, how does it fit within the strategic plan? Is it aligned with what we say we were going to work over the next few years? Or is it just something that came out of the blue and it's not aligned with anything? Explain this. And the final point, and I think this is really important, and often a lot of us will shy away from addressing this point, is there need to be absolute clarity over the personal implication of your change. If your change initiative is going to create more work for people, you need to let them know, yes, this change will create more work for you, that you will have an increased workload from that. Because there's no point to hide things, because people are not stupid and people will discover them at one point or another. And if you were not the one telling them, and after they discover it, they're going to say, hey, what else did Alex didn't tell me? There might be something else. And then they might start to invent stories and so on. And that will derail again your initiative and your change to be successful. So first step, the why. Second step is the leader. Who are you going to select as the leader? Or basically, when I say the leader here, who are you going to select as the face, the person that's going to represent your change management? It's kind of the public relation in a way. So who is going to be the person that's going to drive the change? And this person that's going to drive the change or be the face of change, it needs to be someone that has some power or some influence, someone that's a natural communicator, that's no problem to speak in front of the crowd, no problem to articulate their position, and also someone that people perceive as being forthright and trustworthy. If you select someone that nobody has any respect for them, it's going to be quite hard for your initiatives to be successful, because people say, well, I don't know, this person I already know, like always lying, and he says one thing and it's the other. Again, so it's always important to select who is going to represent your initiative. Step 3, your audience. What do you need to do? So what do you yourself need to do? The first thing is you need to listen. And there's something magical. I don't know if sometimes we don't realize that, but we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Therefore, I think we should listen way more than we speak. But often we have a tendency to have like 3 or 4 mouths and 1 ear. So that's a little bit of a problem there. So always listen first to what does your end users, what does your audience, what do they want to know? What do they want you to tell them? And sometimes if you don't really know how to start about your initiative, ask them what they want to hear. Your message as well should be timely and consistent. So if your initiative is going to start in 1 year from now, well, there's no point giving all the information and all the detail to every single one of the people in the department 1 year ahead of the project, because you know what? It's going to be like, okay, well, people are going to forget about it. So there's always a timing that's important. And you also need to know nowadays that to make sure that your communication is not, when you're going to communicate your change or the initiative you want to go with, you should not only use the way that you like to communicate. So if you like to communicate things by email, don't just use email. You need to be sure that you're going to communicate using the various medias that exist. Because again, it's not about what you like to do. It's making sure that you target your message to everyone. So whether it's going to be using email, face-to-face meeting, town hall meeting, social media, phone calls, and so on and so on. So use all the communication media that are available to you to spread your message, to make sure, therefore, that people are aware that the change, what is your initiative, and that what type of change is going to happen. Step 4, the engagement. Again, change cannot happen if people don't feel engaged. So first of all, people, what do they want? They want to be heard. They want to have a voice, and they want to have the opportunity to tell you what is their concerns and issues. Sometimes they want to tell you, like, you want to implement this new project. I saw that you put 5 steps in order to achieve it. But me as an end user, I think actually there should be 7 steps. At the end of the day, what's important is that your initiative works. And if the people, the end users, believe there should be 7 steps because for them it's going to be more efficient to make it happen, then so be it. As a leader, what you need to do, you need to lead for results. You don't need to manage the process. So it's always important that at the end, if it yields the way, if your initiative is going to be successful, but people want to do it another way than the way that you thought was the best, does it really matter? If, as long as it's done, of course, within the parameters and so on, if they find another way to do it, it's okay. What is your goal at the end of the day? That your initiative being implemented and it yield the fruits that you wanted it to yield. So I think it's important that let's not try to always be too micromanaging and wanting to control everything. You should lead for result and not manage the process. People will feel engaged if they feel well informed, so they have enough information. So with change management, new initiative, don't think there's too much information. Give as much information as possible, and trust me, people will just pick and choose the information that works for them. So don't think there's always too many information. And if you can, have them collaborate, be part of the solution. That's how people, the more people feel they can be part of the solution, they are engaged, the more they would want your initiative to be successful. So if change was that simple, but what we have to understand is every time you're going to implement change, the population or the people within your team, within your department and so on, usually they're split into 5 categories. The innovators, the people that are going to come with the initiative, and then the early adopters. The early adopters are going to be, oh yeah, I think it's a great idea, let's go for it. So about 16% of the people are going to be people that are going to be what we can say early adopters. Then you will have the majority, the early and the late, that make up 68%. And then you have another 16% that will be resistors. That's always how the distribution is, how this population is being distributed when you face change. 16% adopters, 16% resistors, and then the majority that will wait and see. If it seems to be going in the right direction, then they will go with the adopters. If it seems that I don't really like it there, then they will go with the resistors. What you have to understand is that when we talk about the 4 steps, awareness, interest, trial, and adoption, not everyone will go through those 4 steps at the same speed. Some people will go very fast, some people will go very slow. So don't think that you should push or that everybody will move uniformly through change, because for some people, it will have more impact. So now I'm going to ask you a question, so I'd like you to answer. So when you're going to launch your change initiative, your project, should you try first to convince your innovators or early adopters first, or should you concentrate your effort on working on the resistors first, or do you try to push everybody uniformly? So should you try to concentrate your effort on convincing even more early adopters, or on trying to work on the resistors first, or pushing everyone at the same speed? So I have innovators, yeah? So Marianne, if I can ask you to maybe just tell us why you think you should concentrate on the innovators or early adopters first.
Because excusez, je vais parler français si tu veux.
Oui, il n'y a pas de problème.
Okay.
Oui.
En fait, on n'a pas d'énergie à perdre avec la résistance au démarrage. Il faut y aller, non pas avec les obstacles en commençant, mais avec les forces. Et eux vont exercer une influence après ça sur les autres, et puis ça va aller de soi. C'est sûr qu'il faut être à l'écoute des obstacles, mais c'est pas là qu'il faut qu'on mette notre énergie au départ.
Ouais. So yeah, very good point. It's perfect. So actually, again, if you try to push everyone together, like we say, not everybody will go at the same speed. So pushing everyone together, it's not going to work, because the majority, what do the majority will do? The majority, they will just say, oh, wait, I just want to see where it starts to go. So really, if you want to gain some momentum, you need to have some energy, because too often, one of the reasons why change initiative will fail is that you feel alone in you pushing your agenda or your initiative. You don't feel you have enough energy, and you see, oh my God, everybody's resisting. So the best thing first is to make sure that you surround yourself with positive energy and with people that believe in your initiative. And so it's quite easy in a certain way to understand who are your early adopters, because as soon as you start to talk about your initiative, You're going to have those people that are going to raise their hand and say, oh, I think it's great. I have a question about this. Or you will see in their body language and the type of questions, the people that are innovators or early adopters, but you also will see the one that I say, oh, I think it's a stupid idea. We already tried this like 5 years ago and it didn't work. So by you positioning your initiative, you will very clearly see who seem to be your early adopters, who seems to be your resistors. And therefore, you're going to first go to your early adopters, say, okay, well, you look like you seem to be interested. Do you want to be part of the team that's going to work on this? And therefore, you're going to surround yourself with this positive energy. And then once you have done this, then you should actually work with your resistors. And you don't need to convince all your resistors. You only need to convince the leader of the resistance. Sounds a little bit like Star Wars there, but basically, if you can identify, and often we all know, all of you have been working in your department, and the opportunity is that often a lot of you have been working with the same people for 5, 10, 15, or 20 years, so you pretty much know people. So you know, for instance, from the informal network, who seems to be leading the group or which group and so on. So identify the chief, the lead of the resistance and work with this person, because if you are able to turn the leader of the resistance on your side, then he will or she will turn the rest of the group around and he will come and help you. And then the majority will then follow, because the majority, they're just a wait and see in a certain way. I like to say they are more neutral, a little bit like Switzerland there. Hope I don't offended anyone from Switzerland on the call. People strategy, you should always know, okay, whose cooperation will I need to gain in order for my initiative to be successful? Whose support will I need as well? Which opposition could delay or derail what I'm trying to do? And so now we're going to want to go into the concrete things, and the goal is giving you concrete tools. So every single time you want to start a new initiative, a project, a new way, a new procedure that you want to implement, the starting point is to use this tool that's in front of you. It's called the 4 Ps, or PPPP. And this tool is going to help you create a structure plan. So what does it mean by that? The first P is the project name. So that should be pretty much straightforward. What is your project? What is the name of your project? The second P is the purpose. Why are we changing? And what I suggest that you do is to drill down to 5 whys. So if you say, okay, well, why are we changing? We're changing because there's an environmental crisis. Yes, but why is there an environmental crisis and why we cannot continue that way? Well, because of B. But why because of B? Because of C, because of D, because of E. The more you drill down to 5 whys, the more you will have already your communication and your arguments to be able to answer the questions that the audience will ask you when you start to present your initiative. If you just have if you only stay with one why, other people say, okay, well, it's nice, but why do we need to do that? So the more you drill down, the more you will have a detailed approach to explain and rationale why we can no longer afford to go the old way and why we need to now implement this new initiative. So the more work you put on this section of the purpose and drilling down to the 5 whys, the more you are prepared. Then the third one is, what are we changing? What will need to change as a result of me implementing this new initiative? And so it could be that, okay, well, we'll need to create a new procedure, a new manual, so that will require us to create some training material. And if we create some training material, we'll need to make sure that we book a speaker, and we'll then need to make sure we book the rooms, and we'll need to put this in the curriculum and so on. So what is everything that will require to change in order for your initiative to work? And when we talk about the particulars, we're not talking about the people, but really we're talking more about procedures, manuals, anything that are more task-oriented, or equipment, and so on. The last one is the people. As a result of me wanting to implement this initiative, who will be impacted by that? Who will be changing? And that's where you can identify, well, and you don't say, oh, everyone. Well, everyone is not good enough. Okay, as a result of implementing this initiative, clinicians will be impacted, residents will be impacted, students will be impacted, nurses will be impacted, but all of those different groups will be impacted very differently. So you also need to identify how the clinicians will be impacted and how it will be different from residents and how it will be different from medical students and how it will be different from nurses and patients and so on. So therefore, this tool that you see in front of you, you can do this in 5 minutes. And you can also fill this tool, and it will take you 6 months to fill this entire tool that's in front of you. And that's where you will see that often organizations that have change management department, they always start with this tool here, and they will take about a solid 3 to 6 months just to put all the details by following those 4 Ps. Because they will make sure that all the particulars, now we're talking about, for instance, if it's big major changes like implementation, something like EPIC, that's organization Y and so on. Yes, we will send you after a copy of the tools as a PDF, so you will have it just to let you know for everyone. So the first one was the tool, was the 4 Ps. And after, what you also want to do to prepare yourself to the implementation is called the future state. So the future state is simple. You can take a piece of paper, and you will also have the template. We'll send you the template, I believe, tomorrow. And so on the left side of your A4 piece of paper, you will put the future state from an organization point of view. So you, as a result of implementing this change, how will this impact the organization? And basically, it's kind of, again, how the finish line is going to look like. How would I know that I've successfully implemented my initiative? Because it will yield what for the organization from an organization point of view. So that's the left column. And on the right column, what will be the future state for individuals impacted by the change? So how will the people's own job will be different as a result of this project being impacted? So it's possible, for instance, I'll take again, sorry, but I know a lot when I talk about change management, I talk a lot about EPIC. For instance, if with EPIC, some departments really benefited a lot from the implementation of EPIC. But if we take, for instance, the department like emergency or ER, they know in ER that as a result of having EPIC implemented, they will never reach the same productivity level that they used to be with the old legacy system. It will take them more time than it used to do before. So some departments will be very beneficial. Some departments will suffer from change. At the end, we should always understand that not everybody will benefit from change. But in the end, if as a whole, there's more positive than negative, that's where the change will be beneficial. But it's also not realistic to think that everybody is gonna be impacted positively by any change, and we should be okay with that. The last thing, the last tool that I think it's always important to take in mind: how do any initiative, project, and so it's called I call it the project wheel. Everything starts with, first of all, someone sees an opportunity for some change. So it all starts, oh, I see there's an opportunity. I don't know what it's going to be yet. Then once you see the opportunity, you will come with, oh, here's my idea now. Once you have identified what is your idea that you want to implement, and for instance, for planetary health, then you need to identify, okay, if I'm going to implement this idea, what is going to be the impact in terms of how much it's going to cost? What's going to be the impact that it will have on any resources that I will need? What's going to be the impact that this initiative will have on people? Once I identify the impact, we go with what I call the within. What's in it for me? So how will I sell this idea or initiative to people? Because again, if you cannot sell it to them, there's high chance of failure, because people will say, well, I don't like it, so why would I do it? Then once you sell the ideas, you need to have a plan. Okay, what's going to be the plan? How will I plan for my idea to be successful? Once you identify the plan, you're going to put the details within your plan. Then you're going to identify which tools do you need for your initiative to be successful. Then you're going to accomplish, or you're going to implement your initiative. And most of us think that, okay, well, that's it, the project is done. Unfortunately, there's a step that a lot of us and a lot of organizations tend to miss a lot of the time, is that once we implemented an initiative or a project, we never take the time to celebrate. Often, once we implement a project, initiative, we say, okay, well, it's done, then let's move on to something else. So I think it's really important to take the time to celebrate that you were able to successfully put an initiative, that it's working well, and so on. So never, never underestimate the power to celebrate, because if you don't celebrate with the team, with yourself and the team that implemented this, then you will have an impact on people's morale and so on. So the last thing I like to say is the importance of not giving up. Innovation often fails. Why? Because people are alone. Like Marianne was saying, often we don't have enough energy because we feel we are alone. We feel there's too many obstacles. We feel that people are all against us. They don't believe in it, and so on. If you truly, truly believe in your initiative, in your project, then you have to understand you will be there for the long haul. And it's not because you failed once that your initiative is a failure. No, you failed once. Okay, what lesson can you learn from it? And then you try again. And then you try again. But often people will say, oh, it failed, so it doesn't work. I give up. Sometimes, yeah, it will take you years for your initiative to happen. I used to work for IKEA, and at IKEA, what I remember happened is that IKEA failed 4 times before they were being able to successfully implement themselves in Japan. So some organization will have said, well, after once or twice, why would you try a 3rd time or a 4th time? Well, they knew their product was going to be successful. They learned from the lesson every time. It took years and years for them to successfully get implemented in Japan, but the 5th time was the right one. And so if you really believe in something, then you need to know, okay, surround yourself with the right people that believe in you, that's going to be there. And again, it's a 100-meter, it's not a 100-meter dash, it's an ultra marathon. So at the end, make sure you develop a formal strategy. You have a clear plan, use the 4 Ps exercise, future state. We will provide you a template. Be ready to move people through the 4 steps. Make sure that people have a say, they can feel heard. They have the opportunity to give you their feedback in the trial phase, and do not give up. You believe in it. It will take time, but it will happen. Learn from mistakes, and you will make it. And that's it for me. So now, if there's any questions, I think we have a few minutes, and I'll take them now.
Yeah, thanks so much, Alex. That was a great talk with so much content. I know you have it's changed a huge thing. Put it into an hour is tough. We're supposed to finish off at 6:30, so we've literally got a minute. So maybe what my question to you will be is, if people have questions, what's the best way to reach out to you, or
so
if they
quite
want
easy. Yep, they can reach out. It's quite easy. My email address is amessage@eottawa.ca. So you can go wrong there. They can also find me on LinkedIn as well if they wanna connect there. But definitely, as members of the Faculty of Medicine, it's a service we want to offer them. So they can reach out to me, and I will be gladly helping to answer any question and provide them support if they want to create or start to implement change.
Yeah, no, okay, no, that's awesome. And I probably reach out as well to chat with you, because this is it's so important, right? I mean, the stat you showed about 70% of change ideas failing is it's a sobering one. So
Yes,
thank you so much for your time. Thanks for sharing these tools. And I know we're at 6:30 now, so I want to thank everyone for joining. We have a webinar coming up again in about a month. It'll be our second last one. It is going to be on advocacy. And it looks to be really interesting. Eugenie Waters, who's here, a family doctor here in Ottawa, is going to lead that. But there's an amazing family doc from from Quebec in Montreal who is going to be joining her, Claudel, who's done a ton of stuff and started as a medical student and resident. Like she's done amazing things. So I think you know, definitely if you can show up for that, it'll be really good as well, just like this was. And hope all of you have a good evening. Christina, is there anything you want to mention before we get off the call?
No, I think I was just going to say that it was fabulous. I'm so glad that Alex came to do this talk. And one of the great ideas that actually came from the two of you having a chat together was to help us identify our fellow champions, because we know that change can be a challenge, and that you guys came up with this fabulous idea for the button so that we can put it on our lanyards, and then you can identify the other people who are in the community of practice and ready to make change, and you can kind of connect with each other. So those have actually been ordered. So they should be ready in April. Well, probably before April, but we will have them ready for anybody who's in the group who would like to self-identify so they can connect with each other. And also on the Brightspace, we've opened up our reflections. So if anybody wants to start talking about their project with other members from the community of practice, you can go into the Brightspace. If you don't know how to access the Brightspace, you can email us either at igomed or myself at klaperle with the French spelling, LAKLAPERLE at uottawa.ca, and we can make sure you've got access to the Brightspace. So that's it.
Awesome. All right. Thanks. Have a good evening, everyone. Take care. Thanks again, Alex.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.